points. I think that I think we're starting to see a lot of Black people challenge, what we have thought of as achievement and as of the American ideal, participating in the American, what they call the American ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, or the American dream, I should say. I think that people are really starting to challenge that. What does it mean to really be free? And I think a lot of people are like, I'm hearing the word decolonization a lot, you know. But what does it mean to really break away from decolonization and the thinking that we've held for so long? Yeah, so I actually signed up for a workbook that probably should come to my email address about decolonization and our thought process, and kind of, create a new reality, and, supporting each other economically, and even breaking away from some of these careers that we have that we're not happy in a lot of times. And then supporting different systems. I can say it for myself too sometimes. And I think it's interesting. I do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I've been saying that. I think a lot of it now. His book, the more I read it, I feel like he writes it from a standpoint of, how our ancestors would have thought, like initially out of slavery. But thinking about it now, fast forwarding to the present, I think for us we do have the mental challenges, but it's more of a victim. We embrace victimhood versus victorship. So with some of the things he was talking about, I do agree with that. We are still mentally complacent, or you want to say mentally enslaved,
Right.
without being physically enslaved. Um, yeah, it's something that I've been agreeing with anyway.
One of the other things I was looking at when he talked about us being complacent with unnatural circumstances and living conditions. And what that made me think about, one of the reasons why I even started doing the neighborhood cleanups is because there's a lot of psychology behind that. When people are continuously seeing the blight, seeing the debris, seeing the trash, and seeing these types of living conditions, then you condition yourself to believe that that's normal, like this is the normal circumstance for me, when it shouldn't be, and it's not supposed to be. And I think he touched on that as well. Even when you're thinking about how tiny the slave quarters used to be, when they're sleeping on top of each other or sleeping on the floor and it's freezing, inside, or when you're given the scraps from what the master and his family is eating. And, we talked about that before, about the food and how we made the best of it and call it soul food, but you feeding yourself diabetes and high blood pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that he touched on a lot when he was talking about people being complacent with unnatural, circumstances and living conditions. How do y'all feel about that?
Well, for me, I wouldn't even strive to clean a community, and I'll tell you why. It starts inside the home. So you can take a person and you can put them in a clean, quote unquote, clean environment, like that outside environment, but everything is like from the inside out. So you'll have some people you'll clean and they'll be like, well, what you trying to say?
Yeah.
I like it like that.
Yeah, not necessarily doing it like that, but the events that we've done is people, coming out that live in the neighborhood and actually, picking up trash from their own neighborhoods and instilling a sense of pride in, you know, where they live. And we also, when I worked for Habitat, that was one of the models that we use as well, is your road to home ownership, you have to feel invested, you know, in that, right?
No, absolutely. I agree. I absolutely
Instead of just
agree.
working on your house, your house, you're working on other people's houses. In addition to working on your house, you're putting on in that sweat equity, and you're like, I built this, you know, this is mine. And I think that's kind of where the mentality comes in, why the neighborhoods end up being in those conditions, is because, like, well, I don't own this. You know, like, why should I care about it being trash outside, type thing, you know?
Yeah, so basically from the inside out. It's a
Right.
mental thing. So you clean it up, but they're still questioning, well, why should I do that? I don't own it. So it's an inside thing.
Mm-hmm.
Internal mentally, inside your home, what did your family think? You might still have people that might go out and clean, but is it maintained? Is it consistent? How are people feeling? I still think that's like a internal thing. Some people are comfortable. Even if you show them another way, they'll say, well, that's all I know and I like it. I don't want it any other way.
Yeah, and I think the goal is always to
Mhm.
reach the people, even if it's just one whose mentality, you know, you can change in that aspect.
And I agree. I think you have to start somewhere. I think that I was out and about in town here in Griffin today, and I was, in a part of the town where it was just, like you said, it's just not aesthetically pleasing. And that's a lot of places here, to me.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference, when you go to downtown or you're at a store and you see a lot of trash and it looks unclean, it doesn't feel good. And so it's not generating those, those feel good, hormones and feelings. So I think it is reflective, and you have to start somewhere, but you're right. It may not always be maintained, but I think if people took pride, and if it was, even if it's maintained externally, by, if you have to hire people or do something, I think that makes a difference. I do.
And honestly, Griffin wasn't always that way. I don't know how long. Are you a Griffin native?
I've
But
been here for a while.
oh,
Yeah.
well.
I was just at a local store, and it was just, just dirty, just nasty. And, the parking lot had trash. And I mean, I go walking downtown a lot, actually, early in the morning. And, it's just not well maintained.
Yeah. And Yoshunda kind of knows, because I don't know if you really
Mm-hmm.
think about our grandparents and their great grandparents. You went to
Mm-hmm.
areas that they did keep the areas clean.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
It was with our generation, like, what happened? So you weren't raised that way. you
Right.
Right.
know, like it was nice. And you're like, that doesn't even look like it did when, I was late 80s, early 90s. It
Right.
just flipped. Like, what changed? So it's not like it was
Exactly.
a
It's like,
generation thing.
yeah, yeah. There's a disconnect somewhere. And
There he is.
even when he was saying in the book, when he was like, for example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train to life there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean or partially clean, or he might not worry you at all. On the other hand, if you put this same slave in the same hog pen and make him slip and incorporate something in his language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does his hog pen, then you've got a problem. He will soon be in your house. And I think that goes to, speak to everything that we just basically kind of summarize, is you don't know to want better, right? It's sometimes it's a foreign language and a foreign concept to people who that condition is the only thing that they know. And Monique, you were referring to it has to be an internal thing, like starting from the inside out. And I think that's very true. It's so hard to really be able to affect our mental in that capacity. Because some people, regardless, are just so used to not doing anything, it'll be so hard to make them want to work towards different.
It is, because change is difficult.
Yeah.
For somebody to admit mentally that they need to change, the first thing they think is something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
They don't automatically think, oh, I'm making a change because this is going to enhance me, enhance my life, enhance my environment, or whatever. The first thing they think is, well, why I need to change and what's wrong with it? And they kind of close themselves off. I think if they looked at it in a different way, it could be different.
Right.
And what I'm learning now, just by raising my daughter, how you were talking about the environment and how it's a disconnect and just keeping your area or your community clean, is that our kids are privileged.
Very.
And we were kind of privileged too, depending on who your family was. Sure. And even though I'm a neat freak, I'm like, girl, why don't you clean up? And I get so worried because you have a whole, our ancestors before us was you lacked. Right. Now you have another generation that they don't lack anything, but you're getting the same results. So how do we change? Like, how do you fix this? Like, what is the actual mental issue? Because like with my daughter, she's not mentally enslaved, but still getting the same results, if that makes sense.
Right.
If you understand what I'm
saying. It makes total sense. And that's a good question. Like, I don't know the answer to that one. I don't even know.
Because I noticed that these last 4 chapters, it's like, okay, the things he's talking about, we're still getting the same results. However, the mindset of people now is not even the same mindset of our ancestors, but we're getting the same results. Like when he gets to the chapter about the crabs in the barrel, okay, his definition was when you have one person who is trying to do better, you have the crabs in the barrel that tries to knock them down, right? But in our generation, if you're helping them because you're not doing it the way they are, then you're a crab in a barrel just because you just have a different idea. You're still getting the same results. But if you're telling them, oh, it's a better way, or let's do it the right way, are you a hater? Are you blah, 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 blah? Versus you just actually being, successful and you're not even studying anybody. We're getting the same results, but everybody has a different mindset.
Oh, yeah. That whole mentality has completely evolved. into almost everything that you can think of that falls under self-sabotage, like for real.
Yeah.
No, and it's true. And what that goes back to in chapter 10 when he was talking about us being unique. And I think that's something that you touched on before when you and Kayla were talking about a couple weeks ago, that we're a different community, right? And what we would consider to have a connection to whomever our African ancestors were, within the different countries. But now it's us, our own culture, our own community, our own identity. But within that, the problem is, and he talks about how the self-hate was created through the slave masters breeding, how they calculated with the different colors, creating where that in files with light versus dark. You got the field hand versus the house hand, and that just creating that division. And I'm seeing a lot of conversations now about colorism and how that affects us as a community as well, within this whole self-sabotage.
Yeah, because I think sometimes colorism is worse than the racism.
Right.
Racism doesn't bother me at all. This colorism, everything within our community bothers me more than what's outside of our community.
Right.
Sometimes sitting there and hearing someone say, oh, I need to get out the sun before I get dark. And you're like, what? And then they look at everybody in the room, it's like a little tone darker. Or if you think you're lighter, you're prettier. I think one of the biggest things when it came to colorism was me actually taking care of patients and seeing their reactions to their kids. I never forget, I had a patient once, and she was so angry. I went in the room like, what's wrong with her? And she was on the lighter side of the spectrum, but her child's dad was on the darker end. Like, they could polar opposites. And I was like, good morning. And out of all the things she could ask me, she looked at me and it was so hateful. And she went, why is my baby so dark?
Oh.
And then immediately I looked at him because I was like, oh my God, did she just say this in front of the man she had a child with? And he just put his head down. And I was like, well, trying to be really nice about it. Is this the baby's dad? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, well, with genetics, I'm not dark.
Oh my goodness.
And she didn't want to deal with the baby. And I realized and she wasn't the only patient that was that way. And I realized that self-hate is really real. And this is going to be somebody who's going to be raising this kid. So how is this kid going to be spoke to or reacted to growing up?
Right. Now
moving forward.
Have a chance, because no matter what they experience outside the home, it's probably going to be worse and not as bad as what they experience inside the home.
Yeah, because, when you think about slavery, you think about, okay, for instance, my great-granddad was a product of all of that. He was so light that he talks about it. When they used to go around Griffin, they would always ask him, why would he be with this nigger and the nigger kids? So clearly they didn't know he was black. But to see back then, it was classified of what your position was. Like you were saying, the house, the field, who got better treatment. But now it's more of who you think someone is better than or more beautiful than, who's more exotic, who's more deserving of something.
Right.
But do we feel like it's getting better or worse? Because in some ways I see it, darker skin being appreciated more, natural hair being appreciated more. But do we feel like it's getting better or worse?
I know. The hair is appreciated.
It's definitely a movement, but it still causes like crazy divisive arguments between us. I mean, even talking about hair, like a friend of mine I was having a conversation with, we got into, well, it was a heated argument. I'm not gonna say it was a conversation, but it was about natural hair, and he was just adamant that I want to be correct when I quote him on this. It's like, why all of a sudden are people caring about natural hair like it's a statement or a movement? That wasn't something they were concerned with. I think he said like during the civil rights movement or something, like all the ladies had their hair pressed, but now it's a thing to, rock an afro and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't think that you can equate the two. Personally, for me, I told him I didn't think he could equate the two as being the same.
Was he trying to say it was more of a trend? Because I do feel like that's
right. He was
more of a trend.
Right. He was trying to say that it was more of a trend. And I think in some aspects it has been, but in other aspects I think it can be a very spiritual thing for some people.
It is. I think it is spiritual, but I also think majority of it is a trend. I agree with him, because the minute this trend ends, they're going to be going back to straight hair. That's unfortunate with us, because even when she was saying, do you think people are embracing it more? I don't think they're embracing being darker anymore. They're embracing what the representation means. Like how when we say cultural appropriateness, when you see like the Kardashians want to like rock everything that Black people do, I think sometimes we do that to ourselves, when you should just be saying it's just you. Because I hear a lot of times that people say, oh, they'll still say stuff like, oh, she's pretty for a dark girl. Oh my God. And then they have to be a certain type of dark girl to appreciate it. It just can't be any dark girl. It has to be like the Instagram girls, that are really dark, really skinny. Like it has to look a certain way. Like even like when my daughter goes and
that's just for beauty though. You know, like all beauty really isn't embraced. You know, we really don't embrace women unless they have a certain standard of beauty. You know, I just meant that I think at least they do, at least there is more appreciation for darker skinned women, you know, whereas, you know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't there at all, you know.
It's more of a money thing.
You
Like,
think it's money?
yeah, like if, okay, look how many dark people it is, right? It's like Nike when they did this whole movement about the riots. They didn't care nothing about us. They care about green money. So why would Nike not say Black Lives Matter? Why would Amazon not say Black Lives Matter? He quadruple, was it triple quadruple? His income, because people sit at home, Black people shop a lot. It's more with money. If you have Black people complaining that they don't have the products for their hair, they saw the girls on YouTube when they started out in 2009 and they're making their own products. They're like, oh, we got to get in on this. All tones are cute because you need to buy your products. But within our community, it's still like an issue. Because I have to, like, even with my daughter now, she had started to be insecure. And I had to help her because we went in a store. Instead of them just saying, oh, you're beautiful, they'll go, where are you from? You Dominican? And she'll be like, what? Where are you from? You're Black? Yeah, she's Black as crap. But they would be looking at her hair texture. Instead of just telling us we're Black, or like me, if I got with a darker girl, they'll be like, well, what are you mixed with? What the heck you talking about? I'm Black. Well, your hair is curly. How did you make it that way?
How did you make it that way?
Yeah, and I'm like, I was born this way.
Right.
You know, I don't know. But it was really insecure for my daughter. She goes, Mom, why everybody always ask me where I'm from? I'm like, baby, you know, trying to explain to her, they equate darker Black girls with nappier hair, or, you know, that's just how the world is.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I said sometimes I think it's a trend and not necessarily we're not actually embracing ourselves. It's like, you know, this is a great thing to do. It kind of makes me feel comfortable, but as soon as another trend comes, you know, like the trend is all Black people, so they have a big butt. All Black people don't have a big butt, not even in Africa. But we buy it, so we're really not embracing ourselves. It's just that other cultures are saying it's beautiful. So we're kind of like, oh, it is, isn't it? But we don't really accept it. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's another, might even be another form of self-sabotage. How when we talk about these corporations and money, how we get so easily distracted and sidetracked from the actual issues at hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start having arguments about is Nike really supporting us, and completely missing the whole point. You've seen those arguments on social media.
Yeah.
Like now we're completely missing what this is all about to begin with.
Mm-hmm. As long as they said Black Lives Matter, it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
And then you just totally forgot that that's a money thing. It's not necessarily do they really accept you or not. It's that we can't lose this money. So why are you even listening to corporations? You know, and what if they did say they hate you? So for one day they like you, so okay, they cool with me. Invite them to the cookout. That's one thing I hate seeing on social media. We can invite them to the cookout now.
Yeah, yeah. It takes away from our message. It detracts from it.
Yeah.
I don't know. He touched on a lot of things in these last 4 chapters that I did, you know, agree with. But some of it, I just feel like we need to address. That's why I said I really would like to see how he feels now. And then he could be coming from a whole nother generation too. But we still are dealing with this, but the new people just have a whole nother different mindset. It's like you're always tackling something.
Right. That's very true. You know, one of the things that stuck out when we were talking about self-hate in chapter 10 was the quote on page 71 when he said, strive to be something other than a servant of the opponent system, and you'll find yourself being hated by your own kind on the same level as expressed through the man who by nature showed Africa no love. That's pretty deep.
That is really true.
It is on so many levels.
If you start to be yourself and you feel like you don't want to have the average job or the typical hustle, people start to tell you you're on a high horse, so you think you're better than people and you're above yourself, and you're really just living out your purpose and being unapologetic about it. I think if you do something different, that was like the main thing when I read it. I was like, okay, he's telling the truth on that one, because
yeah, definitely.
You're not supposed to be different. You're supposed to be in the in crowd.
Right.
And then if you're not in the in crowd, you're ignored. It kind of reminds me of, because I can't remember what page it was on, but it's back to like the self-hate. Like if you, like now when you're online, you're seeing like the online business owners, we'll look at the people who are flashy or look like they have money, because like they're selling a dream. That's the thing that you're wanting, but they're actually manipulating you. If you have somebody that can really help you, they have like knowledge, and they're just not in that standard image that you're supposed to be in, they are totally disregarding them.
Right.
Because you're unique. I have always questioned, like, how can you even change that? Because it seems like even though people know that you shouldn't look at like the Instagram influencers or things of that nature, and they know people are scamming, they still drawn to it.
Yeah, still drawn to them.
And will take up for them unapologetically.
That's very true.
So it's like, how do you even tackle that? Like, is that mental enslavement? Is it financial? Is it emotional? Like, how do you even tackle that?
I think it's a combination of all of them.
Yeah.
What about you, Sandra?
For chapter 10, I think, like you said, going back to when he talked about, I thought the idea of crossbreeding, and that being used as a way to, kind of turn us against one another. And, I just thought, is that really true? Was that their real reason? Or was it their own lustful desires? Or was there really like some type of thought process that they could turn us against one another if we had all these variations? And I just kind of wonder, was there a lot of validity to that?
I think it was a combination. I think it was lust. I think it was to breed divisiveness. Yeah, I think it was a combination of all of them. Definitely.
Which is so funny to think about, because it's like neither one of them really had anything better. I mean, it seems like you might have been outside in the heat.
Right.
God knows I don't want to be in the heat, but they were on the inside getting beat. They might have been lighter, but
true. Like, and that's the thing. I remember the one thing that I loved about Killer Mike when they had that conference, and Candace Owens and T.I. were arguing back and forth with each other, and he was like, "Are y'all really gonna sit here and argue over whose master is the best and who has the best situation under their master?" Like, essentially, that's what we do.
Yeah, it really is.
It is, and that's what people do. They'll take one little thing and it's better, when really it's all the same difference. And like you said, and then maybe in some ways they might have even had it worse because they were right there with that person all the time under that scrutiny. Being molested, being raped,
or being beat, like being reminded that you were your master's child and his wife
Right.
not liking you because
Right.
that was one of it. Like, they probably even got it worse than the people in the field.
I agree.
You know, and it's just like that happens now. People be like, oh, because you got a silver spoon in your mouth, and you'll be like, what? I have
Right.
to fight hard every day, but
Right.
because you think it looks better.
You think it looks easy, right? It's
Yeah.
easy. Right, and it's not. And like you said, people do that. They take one little thing, or like you said, we look at Instagram and we feel like, oh, that person. We just assign all these things to people when we have no idea really what's going on,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
really
no
what the
idea.
struggle is, or really that they just barely rolled out of bed to take that great picture. You know.
Yeah, and the only glimpse I can even get out of how bad it was is like I was saying, my great granddad, he won't even talk about, like, before he passed away when I was young, he wouldn't even talk about the family prior to him. He would mention something vaguely, like one time he was like, my sister, that she was poisoned on purpose because she was pretty.
Wow.
And like that's the only thing he mentions. And that only gives me a glimpse of how bad it had to be because he was closer to slavery because his parents were in slavery. But he
Right.
never just really talked about it.
Wow.
So it's like, even though we think they might have had it better, it might have been worse.
Yeah.
Because of not only were you getting abused by Master, but then you had your own people who were judging you too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. It was just bad all the way around. And, you know, like you said, all the strife and division wasn't necessary because it was just bad.
Right. Bad for everybody.
It's just bad for everybody.
It's bad.
Just bad. Yeah.
And I can totally see, you know, that also makes me think about the reasons why people didn't try to escape as much as you thought they would, you know, or didn't rise up together to rebel. Is when you think about it, is that type of mentality.
Yeah, because I think a lot of them was like, oh, they think they're good. Oh, they think they're too good to be here.
Right. Right.
So I'm gonna tell because I don't have the guts to escape. It's kind of like me. I don't have the confidence to know that I can do it too. So I'm just gonna knock you down.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's a psychological dependency. And I think he touched on that too when he talked about, you know, the next chapter when he talked about women. But there's a psychological dependency. Even when you talked about, Monique, having a different job or starting your own business, there's a psychological dependency that an older generation has to, quote unquote, having a good, stable job, having good, secure benefits, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have, it's that same thing that feeds you, that stable, that secure, you know. So why would I go against that? Because I don't know what the unknown is either.
Right.
You know, I'm in this strange land too. You got to think about, they were in this land that wasn't theirs.
Right.
You know, they didn't know the parameters beyond, you know, where they were forced to stay. And so we have to look at it through that mindset too, that there was just a lot of unknown there for them in fear.
Right.
And they didn't know if they were leaving for one thing that was going to be worse. And I'm sure there were all these narratives and stories that were fed to them to keep them in bondage, you know.
That's true.
And I think when we talk about the women, that's another one. Like I was telling you, the mindsets are different. Because I know even when he was talking about the woman, and this has been brought up a lot recently, like, oh, ladies, if you have a son, don't baby him, which I don't necessarily agree with, right? Because I think you should love them. But what I noticed when he was talking about like making them passive to prepare them to listen to Master and work. Yeah. But now in 2020, it's just because the mom's lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has made those son her man.
It's a lot of that going around.
I think, Monique, there's a difference between loving and babying too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and making somebody codependent on you.
Right.
And setting them up not to be a good partner in the future, because that a lot of that definitely happens.
That's exactly what they're setting them up to do, is why he was addressing, you know, the male being passive and only being used for, you know, mating or breeding. And it's because you out here making babies and you're looking for your mother. And you're not finding your mother in these women. You're not going to find her in these women because you shouldn't be dating your mama.
Right.
Well, see, a lot of them, unfortunately, are dating their mom. Or they hate her so much, but they're still dating her.
You touched on that before too. You talked about people you had to counsel, and you really don't like your mom, do you?
I hate their moms. I tell people all the time, like, no matter how, like, the thing that's bothering, it just makes me nauseous when I see it. I'm almost about to block some people. To hear Black women, especially I know that they've shared their kids and they have sons, to start this BS with the no, I protects the Black woman. I do not want you raising your sons. Because if you feel that way and you're on social media and you're raising a Black son and you're constantly reminding him nobody's protecting him, you're his teacher. He's gonna grow up one day, rise up and don't protect you.
Right.
Whether you realize it or not. Like, contrary to if it's a single family home, you can have a man in the house. Kids will leave their dads to go with their moms because their mom is the god of their life. She's the teacher, she's the nurturer. She teaches you how to deal with your emotions, how to show your emotions, what you're supposed to do, all of this stuff. And now it's just like a disconnect. Like in the Black community, it's you don't baby your sons. But what they really mean is don't show any affection. The average person thinks, oh, baby, you're not teaching him how to do anything. No, you just don't want to show them affection. Like you tell them, don't hold your baby too much. You're going to spoil them. What is a spoiled baby?
Right.
You know, you see it when you see them teaching their kids. I was so disheartened last Monday to see all day long parents complaining about having to help their kids with school.
Please don't even get me started on that.
And I was like, they're your kids, so if they ain't paying attention and you're at home.
Right.
That's a bigger... And then you complained all day.
Right.
So your kids are hearing you complain about following the rules. What they don't want to follow them? Like, you're the teacher of the child. So a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now, of course, when our ancestors was enslaved, they was thinking about survival. Even if my child leaves me, I just don't want him to be beat.
Right.
So I pamper him. That was teaching. It doesn't sound right to us today because we're not enslaved. Right. But for if you step back and just try to think about your ancestors, you're thinking they mean babying how we talking now. For them, it was, if he can live to 80, even in slavery, I'm going to teach him how to survive. There was a different type of love and teaching versus the crap that we're doing now.
Right.
Even though he touched on it, was like, oh, the Black widow. Nah, you're not finna insult our ancestors like that.
What about when he talks about, creating the Black woman to be dominant and basically turning her child over to white authority, which we see in social programs, and some people will even insert child support in that. What do you think?
I brought that up. What was that, like 2 weeks ago? That, again, don't insult our ancestors. They were married up until you introduced welfare. But even when you introduce welfare, that generation still had their men.
Right.
They just told them to run away when the man came. So it was after that, again, when I was talking about my daughter and she's privileged, think about our grandparents and their children, our aunts and stuff. They were like the first generation of being privileged. Because grandma was keeping the kids. Those the women who were like, I'm finna be free.
Right.
And there was the first generation going to the club, and my mom can watch the kids. I'm finna go do whatever it is that I want to do. That's when we start having the issues of, I don't think it's a problem with women being dominant. It's the problem of you just don't want nobody else in the home. You don't want a man or nothing because you want to be liberated.
Right.
Because you can't have a weak woman with a man. I'm sorry. I don't care what nobody says. And people be talking about they want to go back to Africa and touch into our roots. Those women were not weak. I don't know your definition of submission, but it takes a strong woman because the woman is really the foundation of the man. Like he was saying, a weak woman is going to guide a man. Where's she going to guide him to? Straight to hell? That's what's wrong with most of these men now when they be dating. She doesn't feed you what you need.
Right.
So when we talk about Willie Lynch and we talk about our ancestors, it was a whole type of mentality of, yeah, he made her weak because yes, her man loved her, but she also loved her man too.
Mm-hmm.
And she had his back the way he had hers. She rather build up a man who she knows that she'll be able to see, or if he got sold off and she never saw him, she knew he could survive to last for the next generation. That's
Right.
totally different than what we're dealing with now. You just have women who are like, I'm a single mom and F these men, and son, you the man of the house. Excuse me. He becomes your boyfriend, then he gets married to get a girl, and you're fussing
Amen.
with your girlfriend because
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to beat the position with the girlfriend or the wife because you think that's your position.
Right.
And I think I saw a post too from Ricky Smiley when he was talking about sometimes how women will interfere when a man does try to come in and teach, a boy how to be a man. Is that sometimes women will have the tendency to interfere with that because we do nurture in different ways. There's that yin and yang. And sometimes in our wanting to protect, it can get in the way of that boy being taught some things that he needs to know about manhood.
Right.
Because we cannot, I just believe this. I don't think I cannot teach a man how to be a man because I'm not a man.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things that, like you said, that's
I don't
being
think we
touched on
can't teach a
today.
man how to work. Like I don't agree with that statement either. Because again, the women are the teachers. For a lot of times we say we can't teach a man how to be a man, and then a man is trying to teach his son what he's supposed to do for a woman when every woman isn't the same. As long as his mom can teach him how to love in a healthy way and interact with her as the woman. Because if you notice, you'll see some men, they're like, I'm a great guy, but then they got their guidance from their mom, and then they'll get with a woman and she's like, I don't want that. And then you can be dating him and realize his mom was a manipulator. And
Right.
then they'll say he's weak and I don't want him. He's like, what's wrong with me? I'm a good guy. Your
And
mom was a
see,
manipulator.
yeah, and what I meant by that is that I cannot though, but see, I still stand by what I said is this, that I'm still not a man, so I cannot tell a man about being a man. Just like he
Right.
can't
I
tell me
think it
about
is
being a
more so
woman.
towards navigating the world of the
Right.
male mentality.
Right. And exactly. And I think that that doesn't mean that there's not room to teach a man about relationships or that we don't teach each other. I just think it's different things and different aspects though. There's still things that he needs to learn from a man that I don't know about, that needs to come from a male authority figure. But it doesn't mean that I don't have authority. It doesn't mean that I don't teach him things about life and love and that I don't have value as his mother. But to say I can give him everything, nobody can give you everything.
Right. All right, y'all. Getting in the car, you might hear some noise. What about him discussing the woman as a political pawn? What do y'all think about that?
I'm sorry, I'm back. I was fussing at the grandchild. So what now? What was the question?
Him talking about the woman being a political pawn, the black woman being a political pawn.
It reminded me of, I guess, our conversation when we talked about women being involved in voting rights and feminism movements, and sometimes maybe how we're bought in when we have different issues, and that maybe that's sometimes manipulated. I don't know.
I think we're emotional.
Yeah, we can.
So, I think we can be a political pawn because if you get the right woman who does not know how to operate in her masculine energy and she's fully emotional, she can change the dynamics of anything.
Right.
And make someone believe that you need something.
Right.
And then they gravitate toward it because who doesn't believe the woman?
Right.
Which is unfortunate, but it happens.
I think it even goes back to what we were discussing when he talked about us being distracted and, the women's feminist movement, or when I was reading some more up on, women's suffrage with the right to vote, and you realize that the white women really didn't want the black women on board like that, except as political pawns in the South, because what they said was, hey, you don't want these black men and black women voting because they're going to vote together. So we don't want to include the black women. What happens is when you have the white women voting and the white man voting, that gives them that political power, right?
It's true. It's kind of like now when we look at Biden and Kamala. And I put that post up and everybody went crazy. And I'm like, how are you a black woman and don't understand where I'm coming from? Because black men might think they're the most hated, but you put a real black woman against an old white man, you haven't seen hate yet.
But no, it doesn't even have to be against an old one. I mean, look at what Stacey Abrams went through.
I know, because I tell people, I said, everybody's like, oh, you need to vote because she's black. Okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't vote. I don't have no choice but to vote for her because I don't want Trump. But the fact that he picked her let me know that she has to be somebody who has to go with his agenda. Because in my mind, why you didn't pick Keisha Bottoms?
He's looking for somebody who had appeal. And let's just be honest. We're also talking about physically, and it goes back to where we were talking about when we started talking about, the battle against light versus dark, straight hair versus kinky hair.
Yeah.
All of that played a part in it, because even when she was running for governor, I was reading these disgusting comments from our people that were talking about, her teeth, or her being overweight, or, her needing a stylist and all this other stuff that was just had nothing to do with her ability to run off.
Because in my mind, she was only chosen because, just like Obama, to white people, he's not really, like, she's black, but she's really like Indian. They're like, well, maybe I can go with that, and then she might get the black votes. But why he didn't pick Keisha? You would have impressed me if you picked Keisha Bottoms.
You
ain't gonna pick her because look what she did to Kemp. Because she's a black woman. That if she says, I don't like your agenda, she's gonna speak up.
Right. Very true. Mm-hmm.
So therefore, she's out of it. I need somebody. If I say anything, she just kind of sit there and go with it, but she can still show up in the black events and be like, yeah, let's talk about it. Because in 4 more years, we're going to need that information so we can figure out what we can put in the campaign to get their vote.
Right.
So
again, it's emotional.
That's still a part, too, like you said, that the colorism comes in again, like even with President Obama, or, the vice president picked Kamala. There's still, like you said, this colorism thing that goes where they're lighter. What some people would say was more visually appealing, or was more acceptable, or people feel more comfortable with, Yeah, and that's sad.
It's mostly like dark women who are saying, like, I was like, okay, if you want to talk about what she did, that's fine, because I talk about stuff. But some of the people, they're just like, bitch, and she ain't even cute. And I'm like, what they got to do with like, seriously, I saw people saying, I'm like, what the hell to do with her being able to actually, do the job or not? Or why do you feel like
you were saying, like you were saying, Yoshunda, I think part of what Stacey Abrams was the look, the natural hair, the being overweight, all those things that people would find not as acceptable or pleasing,
And with her, she's smart. So like I was telling someone, that's another thing. She doesn't fit the part with the look. But I also didn't feel like she should be vice president either, because I think everybody has a position. So like how she's the lady that does, like, she needs to be the one who supports whoever's in office, because she's going to make sure people get their votes. So how everybody has their own part. Out.
She knew that, and she knew that, which is one of the reasons why she, because the Democratic Party, she was their first choice to replace John Lewis, said no. And like I said, there was a reason for that, because strategically she knew that she needed to remain and with her Fair Fight Georgia organization
Mm-hmm.
doing what she's been doing.
Yeah, because behind the scenes, she's great. You know, you have people who like the foundation, and then you have the people up front. Unfortunately, her looks, that's sad, but it does go. But she's still a powerhouse. She can play her positions. But unfortunately, like you said, like her, you know, when people were fussing about her, you know, for some of us, it was, you might have an opinion about how she may or may not do something. But for a lot of them, I'm like, but you're the same color as her, or you're the same size. So how you calling her fat?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now that does go to self-hate.
Oh yeah.
Because people start to deflect how they feel about themselves onto you.
Exactly. Which was also a part of, you know, chapter 12 too, when he talked about, you know, trying to maintain status and competition and devaluing other Black people because you think you're in a position where you're one of the haves and no longer a have-not, you know, so you're maintaining that mentality just because you think you achieved a certain status with the, you know, in white corporate America.
Again, which is so funny because you never get a status.
Right.
You just get a different experience. That's what I want to call it. A different experience.
What did it say? You still a nigga?
Yeah. I tell people that all the time. I just take a different experience. I don't stop, but it doesn't make you better. Because if you think somebody arrived, they haven't arrived yet.
Right.
It's just a different experience.
Right. Exactly. And I think one of the things that was funny to me when he talked about how we're so easily distracted with entertainment and sex. And it brings me to the whole argument about WAP. Why are we having an argument about this? Like, y'all are so easily distracted. Why are we arguing about this song? Why?
And what's so sad is people really are for real about that. And I'm like, me up here like it wasn't nasty enough. They're like, oh my God.
Right. Think about everything that we've endured when it comes to 2 Live Crew and Too Short and Kilo and everybody else. And then you make a big deal about a song like WAP. Like, I'm confused. I don't.
And that is another thing about you talking about mental enslavement, like the kids wanting to show porn on during class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling somebody, even with WAP, so many people you had enslavement from the master, right? And then I think he touched on how people want to go back to like liberate themselves. And I think one of it was like spirituality, Christianity, and the Islamic is so restricted on, especially for a woman, to be sexually liberated, as if God did not make sex. And they real life got distracted over WAP because of something that's natural.
But let me tell you what's funny, because I had this discussion too. You know, after living and working in Saudi Arabia, and the thing when we get in discussion about the burqa, the hijab, and the niqab, and I just noticed some things about Saudi culture. You know, first of all, of course, it's very patriarchal. It's very patriarchal society. But you will not find any single mothers. All you see out are families. Now, if you see a single mother, then her husband, you know, died or something, or they may have possibly gotten a divorce because it's becoming a little bit more accepted in the culture now. But, you know, the whole children outside of wedlock, that's probably 0.000000001%. Like, seriously. But the other thing that you also see is you don't see the issues surrounding sexual harassment or something like a Me Too movement, or, you know, sexual assault, because of the religion with them being modestly covered. You know, when you're out and about and you're seeing the women in the abaya, and you can't tell whether she has big boobs or a fat ass, because she got on the sheet, basically. It's like a poncho. I'm just being honest. Like, it's really like a poncho. And if her face is covered, you don't know if she's beautiful or not. You don't know if she has nice teeth. You don't know if she has, you know, really good hair. You don't even know what her status is, because you cannot tell based on her clothing, right? You don't even know. So I thought that was an interesting, you know, comparison between their culture and our culture in that aspect.
And then too, in their cultures and other cultures, like for instance, here you have, like, they might celebrate when a girl goes through puberty, right? Or a boy goes through puberty. But like for the girls, you just throw like a little party. And then for boys, you have something crazy like, you want to go be with a woman? Be like, really? Like he's a teenager.
Like Boosie getting a stripper or a prostitute for his.
Yeah. And then from that point on, you're sexualized, right? Instead of talking about sex to your kids, it becomes sexualized. You know, for guys, it's like, go sleep with other people. For girls, it's just like, don't you be with nobody. And then they have to learn, like, of course, we all been through puberty. You know what feelings you get. God made you that way. Your hormones, you want to explore. And then we have to learn about sex for ourselves. And then when you do get older, with other cultures, they like kind of teach them, like they get the little girls. I used to notice that when I was a nurse. They would get them together and all the elders would come. And sex wasn't like a giggle session. Like they talked about it and how to please your man, how to please yourself. Even if they were modest, that's a part of life. And here it's different. It's like first you might have to tell yourself about it. And then when you do, we don't teach you how not to give mixed signals. Like we'll tell you to flirt with a guy, get him sexually stimulated, and then be like, oh my God, he touched a breast. No, you assaulted me. And it's like, well, why did you arouse him? Well, if I said no, it's supposed to be no. Now look, I'm not saying somebody's supposed to get raped, because if you say no, you do say no. But it's like, at what point did you thought it was a good idea to arouse someone?
Right.
And that it should be for play.
Right.
Because you can't control someone else but yourself.
Exactly.
You don't know how they're going to react to it.
That's very true.
And I was telling someone, if we don't want to see kids giggle about porn and show it on Google Classroom, people need to start talking about sex. They were like, oh my God, I'm not going to be talking to sex with my kids. Yes, because if you talk about it to them and let them know it's normal, they won't even use it as entertainment.
Right. That's very true.
They'll be like, you know, if one kid did it, they'll look odd. Like, what's wrong with him? It's just sex.
Right.
You know, or, you know, like you were saying, a lot of people don't get sexually assaulted. It's kids that don't even know the names of their body parts or who should and should not touch it. Or who they should and should not take clothes off of. Like my daughter, when she got 2 and she could talk, I was like, you know, when you go to the doctor, only your mom and your doctor, if your mom's there, or your dad can see you without your clothes. If somebody came in, I didn't care if it was her dad or anybody, okay, you need to put a shirt on. Can't bathe with her. You can't put her in a tub. Most parents will say that's innocent. Yeah, but if somebody else keeps your kids and you're saying it's normal at home and you don't teach them boundaries with their bodies, you know, they have control over it. They could go over to the babysitter's house and the babysitter can be in the tub with them. They're like, well, my mom do it with me. Or my dad does it with me. This is normal.
And I totally agree. I think in our thinking that we're protecting kids, you know, we're really harming them. You know, by teaching them nicknames and, you know, all these things that aren't true and not being open with them, that we're setting them up for things to happen rather than protecting them. You know, I totally agree with that.
And knowing that everybody don't have the same home.
That's true.
Exactly.
You might be fully protected, and they might be over there having porn with their 6-year-old or 1-year-old every day.
Right.
So it is a little different when you talk about the spiritual and sexual aspect of it. I just thought it was interesting that he brought up the spiritual part of it. Because I was like, that's a lot to really think about, really, for me. and our kids.
That's true. That's very
Mm-hmm.
true. You know, the thing that really took me out toward the end of the chapter when he said 291 years from the date on the Willie Lynch document, Black men are still drafted and traded from institution to institution and from team, which is plantation to plantation, whether they're used to or not. No, like he was talking about athletes and how they made the new definition of really entertainers, period, have made the whole mating and breeding thing popular all over again as a mentality. You know, like Lil Wayne having kids with all these different women, or you know, Tristan Thompson having kids with, you know, I forget her name, but then hopping back to Chloe and then hopping back and forth. You know, just things like that. We're normalizing this behavior. It's being normalized through, you know, celebrities and entertainers and athletes.
Yeah, like what's the name? Dang it. Reality TV. It was what I was looking for. I stopped looking at those. But you know, it took me maybe last year. Because you know, when I look at stuff, I truly look for it as entertainment.
Right.
I don't really think about nothing else too deep.
Right.
And interacting with people online, you know how they be talking about different TV shows and movies and stuff or music, and them saying, you know, what they're doing. I'm like, oh, so people really look at this for wisdom.
Right.
Or what to do. Like, I never even realized that people took it serious.
Right.
Until like last year. You know, like that's why I live my life and do my relationships like this. And I'm like, because of the celebrities are aligned on hip hop Atlanta.
Right. And it's true. And this is why they feel like they need to be present and post everything too. And that's why I don't, and you know, I will deactivate my social media in a second for some peace, because I'm all about protecting my energy. Like, I'm not on there to get all these different kind of likes, to get all these different kind of shares and comments. I don't care anything about that. You know, your platform, my platform, Sandra, you know, yours as well, is basically to inform people and educate them. You know, we're not trying to sit here and, you know, post different cars or post different vacations and all that other stuff. And I think people they do get caught up in that. And that is also the disconnect from the spiritual.
It is. Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I think a lot of them think that the things are their God.
Right.
Things, you know, which is unfortunate. Because I tell people anytime, you can get stuff and still be unhappy.
Right. All day, every day.
So you strive to get more and more and more, because what I see a lot of people do is they get these things, and by the time they get it, the new trend has came.
It's very true.
And they always feel like that they're behind, or they figure out that it was a lie. Like I said, like a lot of people be like, oh, hip hop Atlanta. In my mind, I'm like, some of these people I know in real life, and
no,
they ain't doing that in real life.
Remember, I think we had a conversation before, and I was like, it was cracking me up when I watched these shows, because these people are being excited about vacationing in like Puerto Rico and Costa Rica. And I'm like, ain't there some shit you supposed to do on a regular basis? Like, you got all this money. Like, why is this just a thing you're just now doing? I don't understand that.
Right.
And I don't even try to explain it anymore. Because sometimes when you try to explain it, then they'll look at you like, that ain't normal. And then I have to think sometimes, like, you know, it wasn't always normal for me either. But then again, like going back to when you were talking about cleaning up your environment around you, sometimes people don't even go beyond. Like one time I was talking to someone from our hometown, and they weren't joking. They were laughing at their relatives, but they weren't joking. And they was like, they never left Griffin. And I was like, wow. Because I was like, if you do it once, you probably do it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and then because you see a whole nother world and how people react and how they connect with God. You know, a lot of things you see recently that was another thing that made me think about spirituality, is so many people are like, oh, crystals and sage. That's just witchcraft. But you see them on Sundays in the church.
Who told you that was witchcraft? Where did that come from?
Or they doing evil stuff to people. And
Right.
like, you ever talk to someone who does that? And then I've seen evil in the church. I've seen people pray for people not to get something.
Right.
Is that not witchcraft?
Right.
Because they're in their little world, and they don't go outside of that.
That's very true.
Which is, I guess that would be classified as mental slavery.
It is definitely a form of it.
Yeah, and I think that's when we were talking about exposure is so key. You know, like you have to be exposed. You have to see something that's different beyond just your small world in order to grow.
Right.
It's vital.
It's very true.
Because I made it a point that my daughter, I was like, we're going to go out of the country.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We can see a different culture.
I'm trying to tell you, like, seriously, I already told people, I'm like, look, y'all mess around and let Donald Trump get back in office. Permanent resident somewhere else because I don't have time for this BS.
I already considered that. I've already told my daughter. She doesn't live with me. She's like, Mom, you gonna move out of the country? Yes, I'm moving somewhere.
Right.
No, Yoshunda, it's already happening. Have you seen that? Like, there are people that are relocating.
Oh, yeah, repatriating back to other places.
Yeah.
I want, if Canada tells us they will accept us as no, I'm serious, as political refugees, I will be there tomorrow.
I probably would, and those benefits would be jumping. So I'll be like,
I'm trying to tell you, man.
Yeah, and it's different because, like I tell people all the time, sometimes we can have these conversations, but to me, if you're in a Black community, we're all Black, and we're trying to better our people. And we can say, like, of course, we've dealt with white people, and we can say what they're doing. But if you don't really get in the camp, as in you go experience what people are thinking in their cultures, or you go to South Asia, you figure out what the Indians are thinking, even Jamaicans. How can you really prepare for what's ahead?
You can't.
How do you know what you're up against?
You don't. That's it. You just don't.
Because, I mean, that was a great, me being a nurse, I would see all the nurses be like, ugh, they get on my nerves. Because, you know, people say it's not true, but, you know, the United States judges everybody. You would have nurses like, she gets on my nerves. Why she want me to heat up her food? You know, I'm talking like Asian. Because, you know, their culture, like Japanese or Asian, when they want to heal, they eat warm or drink warm food. But to just see how like how families interact, how the cultures interact, what they're thinking. I would just have conversations with them just to feel like, what do you think about, you know, politics and what do you think about this? And it was eye-opening. And when you're trying to
outside of here, and they just think we flat out stupid.
Yeah, and if you have
honestly, they just cannot believe the stuff that is going on here. It's like, how are y'all even allowing this stuff to happen?
And they really do. They say that, and when you talk to them and you have a conversation, they're like, oh, so you're interested in this stuff? Like, yeah. Yeah, I am. Because like you were saying, they really think we're stupid and they think we just don't care. And we just exist.
They already look at us as the bastard children of Europe anyway. Like, first of all, your English is horrible. That's what you think about us, because it's not British English. And your form of a democratic government is laughable, basically.
And I just feel like when you're trying to, you know, and it brought back when I was saying that we're a different tribe. Like, I really do think we need to face the fact that our ancestors are African from the motherland, but you're in a different tribe. You're in this freaking system of America.
Right.
And if we're going to be better of a people, we're just not against, I won't even say against, but it's not overcoming white people. It's like overcoming the United States. It's overcoming Europe, Africa, because all Africa is not true our people anymore. It's like everything in this planet.
Right.
We got to understand to be able to be strategic.
That's very true. Very true.
And I feel like that's why sometimes we lose the ball when we're so focused on what slavery did. It's like, okay, slavery happened, but the politics and stuff around us is insane.
Right.
Because in my heart,
in the past that we don't focus on finding solutions for the now.
Yeah, for the now, because like in my mind, I hope she doesn't do it. But if Biden wins, in my mind, I'm like, Black people are going to be set even further behind. Only because I feel like their agenda is going to be the LGBT community, and then it's going to help the Asians.
Mm.
Because she's not going to forget her mom. I don't care how Black she looks.
That is true.
The foreigners and the LGBTQ community.
Well, let's talk
now,
about
our community in that, yes, and I want them to have rights.
But let's talk about on that, piggybacking off of that, most recently, how these universities are being sued because of affirmative action when it comes to Asian students. And, you know, they're feeling butthurt about, oh, my test scores were this high.
Mm-hmm.
And I did all of these academic, you know, extracurricular activities, but because the person is, you know, Black or a woman, you know, they're getting in and I'm not. So it's a whole bunch of issues behind that.
It is, like, even with the HBCU, I was telling somebody, you know, they brought up that Kamala went to HBCU. I was like, I'm quite sure she did. Not because she was Black, but last time I checked, like, even when I wasn't in the HBCU at West Georgia, they were getting into the honors programs, full riding scholarships, because they were quote unquote a minority.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't benefiting any Blacks. Like, none of us who was really smart was in those programs full riding. It was everybody from another country. They were paying for them, flying them over.
Mm-hmm.
All from Cali.
Then what I know now, I would have totally different race or ethnicity. Like, I know I'm not Black. My last name is Jonas.
But I'm serious, because she's Black now, but I guarantee you when Kamala fills out a thing, she's what she was when they put her in office. She's an Indian American.
Right. You didn't see how I got into an argument with this white dude on Rodney's page about that. And he was like, "Are you calling me white?" I said, "I'm calling you whatever it is you check on your documentation." That's exactly what you are, sir. I can guarantee you're not checking Black or African American. I can see that.
See, it's just a lot that I think we're so, not everybody, but I think some of us are just so behind. We're so caught up in the victim mode that we don't realize it's a lot of layers we have to get through.
That's true.
We stay focused on what happened in slavery. 5 of our generations don't die since then. Like, what are we gonna do right now? What we're dealing with? 'Cause I don't even think a lot of us truly even know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We just know we want more.
Right. That's very true.
We just know that it should be something out there. But as far as knowing like how to get it, and people who are trying to move to get it because you don't understand it, like he was saying, you're a crab in the barrel. Or you think you're better than somebody, or some people just think they're right. The only thing that they wanted to achieve was the American dream.
Right.
The American dream, I ain't heard them say nothing about it since the 80s. When did they stop?
Because ain't no such thing. Ain't no such thing.
It doesn't exist. Right.
When we was growing up, it was everywhere, the great American dream. They ain't seen it in a long time.
Oh man.
It's clearly you better get it out the mud. We are getting it out the mud. You better figure out what your place is and get everything that you can before they decide that nobody can get.
I'm trying to tell you, man. You are absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that.
So I tell people all the time, y'all sitting up here arguing, like you were saying, y'all arguing about what? I'm trying to figure out when they're going to say this money ain't worth nothing.
Right.
Y'all hoarding paper money They about to say it's worth nothing. Y'all worried about what?
Oh, it's over with for paper money. It's over with.
Like seriously, because you got to think about that in bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was telling somebody, a lot of y'all have. I'll never forget once I got a Walmart bank account, right, the little card, because I was just like, oh, I'm gonna have this extra card with some money, and I was gonna give my daughter some money, and I had 2 deposits go on this card like in 2 days. The third day, they like disabled the card. I was like, gosh, why did they disable the card? I'm gonna give it to my daughter. They was like, we got a red flag for money laundering.
Girl.
What?
Now, can you, because they was like, it was 2 deposits, and the amount it was, we don't know if you're doing something illegal or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I had to go withdraw all of this money.
It's not, and I thought, people thought that the whole Bitcoin thing was going to be just this passing thing, but no.
No. The only thing that I'm worried about Bitcoin is, and I tell people this all the time, they say I'm just a hater, but I'm not. If a lot of black people doing it, trust me, white people don't think it's valuable.
Yeah.
Now, are you making money? Yes. But at any given moment, they can say the Bitcoin everybody else is doing worth nothing because we're making our own Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what, China is doing right now. They're taking their whole country cashless.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just that you see it happening now. I mean, you go in stores, like you said, I think it's over with.
But and that was the thing that was so amazing to me. The stuff that we're doing with our cards here now is stuff that China was doing back in 2012 when I was there.
Yeah.
I tell you, I'm serious. Like I thought I lost my mind when I went to return an outfit and it immediately went on my card while I was standing there in the store. Like the money went back on my card. And I was like, if they can do this here, why can't they do that at home? And it caught on at home, but they would tell you had to wait 5 business days before it would show up in your account. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm like, dang. And even with DoorDash and Grubhub and all that, they were doing that a long time ago.
Years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, that's why I was saying we have to really know what's going on outside of our community, because for you to even bring that up, my uncle lived in Japan like in 86, I think. Mm-hmm. They were always like 20 years ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. You have to look at them for what they're doing to know what's coming here next.
Yeah, because even now they're going with the, due to everything that's going on with the economy. Now, we kind of have it here now, like Afterpay. I think the other one's like Klarna. But like Stripe just notified me to tell me, like, China is offering, I can't even think of the name of the program, where they just go in the store and they can buy whatever and then they pay it later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're just now getting hip to that. People are like, Afterpay.
Right, just now getting hip to it.
Yeah.
Even fashion. We're so behind in fashion. Fashion forward. Japan is so fashion forward, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Everything that they do there, we doing 2-3 years behind them.
But that's stuff we have to watch, because you have a whole community of people that say, I don't trust the bank.
Right.
How you gonna not trust the bank? Well, if you're holding your cash and today they say it's not worth nothing, or the only other option you got is to pay your bills through a bank.